Well, alright! Welcome back to As It Should Be. Paul Bertolino here in the world famous As It Should Be Studios. And, well, today I am doing an album review. I haven't done a lot of album reviews. I don't do nearly enough album reviews. Well, it's not every day that a new Redd Kross album is out, okay? And, well, a new Redd Kross album just came out yesterday. As of me shooting this video, it came out yesterday, Friday the 28th of June. And, it's the Redd album. Yeah, it's the self-titled double album, Redd Kross. And, you know, obviously an homage to the White Album, but also, you know, there's a little bit of Odessa going on here. I don't know, you know, maybe. I don't know if that was intended, but it's probably just a byproduct of the fact that it's, you know, red. But, you know, on this cover we have here a terry cloth beach towel with a little Redd Kross embroidered in there, right? And, Jeff and Steve as mere children. And of course, if I can get it out, the record on red vinyl. I mean, come on. We would be disappointed if not. Okay, but yeah, so the new Redd Kross album, entitled Redd Kross, 18 tracks. I just can't believe that they're still making records this good this late in the game, right? I said this on a recent Albums of the Year video. Redd Kross never lost the ability to be Redd Kross, and well, that's rare. Rare when bands don't lose the ability to be themselves, where bands don't suddenly come to a point where they have to try desperately to do what they once did. Redd Kross just does it. Like it's no problem. They can do it in their sleep if they wanted. But fortunately, this time they did not do it in their sleep. Yeah, I mean, this record sounds super charged with ideas. It sounds like they're just brimming with enthusiasm and creativity and enthusiasm. Well, I think I already used the word enthusiasm for the project. It was just they were in the zone when they made this record. It's so clear. Now, I've been a Redd Kross fan for decades. We're talking over 30 years now. So, album after album after infrequent album, it's always an exciting time. And this one, the level of this particular record brings me back to the excitement of my favorite albums of the past. We're talking, you know, stuff like Phase Shifter and Show World and stuff like that. I mean, I really consider this to be on the level of stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, well, let's get on to it. I'm gonna do a track by track review of this. I'm gonna go over every song. I'm gonna put on my glasses because I have notes. I have a lot of comments and things that I want to say about these tracks, and I have it all written down. I don't want to forget anything, so I'm gonna be reading. I'm gonna pretend like I'm not reading, but I'm gonna be reading. Okay. All right. So starting with side one, Candy Colored Catastrophe. Colored with a U, and well, this was written by Jeff, and I love the soft, breathy vocal at the beginning, and I love how it kicks in, becomes a heavy, melodic track. This was the first single and video that came out, and well, my interpretation of the song is that it's about Paul Stanley and his terrible art. I don't know if that's true, Jeff. I don't know. You want to weigh in on that? But that's how I interpret these lyrics. Now, here are a few lines for you. You paint your masterpiece upon your face. Fractured mirror reflects the distance that you feel. And abandoned by your demon, it's so easy to see. Come on. Okay. Now, but this isn't the only Kiss reference on the album. More on that later. Alright, so track number 2 is Stunt Queen. Now, this was written by both Jeff and Steve, and it's probably my favorite track on the album. And it's probably a new all-time top 10 Redd Kross track for me. I mean, I think this track smokes. When I first played this record, the first time I played this record, when this track came on, I basically was reliving the first time I played Phase Shifter and Lady in the Front Row came on. That track came on, and it was just like, oh my god, it was just at that moment, it was my new favorite Redd Kross track, and that's what happened with this. And yeah, so Actually, this song could easily fit on Phase Shifter or Show World, actually, and vocally, this is Jeff's twist and shout. Yes, and it features some really good and proper trashy Mick Jadestone lead guitar. Now, this is one of several angry diss tracks on this album, which is a bit unusual for the normally sunshiny Redd Kross. Pop songs usually have one hook, if they have any hook at all, but this one has at least 2 or 3 as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, stellar track, Stunt Queen. Alright, on to the third track, Main Attraction. Now this is the most recent video and single. They just put this out a couple days ago. Now, this was written by Steve alone. Steve wrote this on his own, but it's very much a duet between the brothers. And, the whole self-titled double LP thing, along with the cover, is obviously a play on the White Album, like I mentioned. But unlike the Beatles sounding and becoming fractured on the White Album, Jeff and Steve sound more collaborative and together on this album than they ever have. The Main Attraction, and when I walk away from this album, one of the things that sticks in my brain is from this track. So, right there. Talk about an earworm. Alright, so track number 4, Canción Enojada. Alright? Speaking of diss tracks, this one even literally refers to itself as a diss track in the lyrics. So, and the title translates to English as Angry Song. Alright? You're the sickest thing in this world is a line borrowed from Stupid Girl, I suspect. It must have been, because they don't do this stuff on accident. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. All right. This is a new phase Redd Kross track. It doesn't sound like anything else in their catalog, and I love the lead guitar and the modulations during the break. Great stuff. Canción Enojada. All right, so track number 5, the closing track on side 1, is Good Times Propaganda Band. Now, I get Neurotica vibes from this one. Kind of, you know what I mean? I could imagine that lineup doing this during their acoustic Love Is You section of their shows that they used to have back then, with Jeff on bongos. Now, the title is clearly a tip of the hat to the Ruddles, and there are certainly some light Stig O'Hara vibes happening here. And I suspect that the first verse is referencing Bob Dylan. Maybe, possibly. It's kind of mellow and psychedelic and all that kind of stuff, but then it really kicks in hard at the end, with a chant. Yes, 2 D's and a K, hey! Yes, 2 D's and a K, hey! Yeah, and I love that part. I do wish the vocals were mixed a little higher in that section. They're pretty buried. Now, I'm sure that's not an accident. I'm sure that was very much done on purpose, but I do wish to hear them good and loud. But anyway, yeah, so Good Times Propaganda Band. Alright, so now we turn the record over and we go to side 2, and side 2 opens with a song called What's In It For You. And now this sounds like it could be a track from the Jeff solo album. Yeah, it's very much a Jeff solo album type thing. He wrote the track on his own. Track, song, whatever, and this is another one of my favorites from the record. Now, the chorus is a really great hook, but then there's also the earth slips on its axis, which is another hook as far as I'm concerned. This what a great track. This if I was gonna cut this album down to a single disc, because people always have to do that with double albums, right? Well, if you took all these tracks off and did the best 12 and made a single disc, which songs would you choose? This would definitely be one of the songs I would put on that single disc version, that's for sure. Alright, so next is I'll Take Your Word For It, written by Steve. This is one of the 4 singles that they put out so far, and now this is yet another diss track. I feel like there are 2 lyrical sort of threads running throughout this album. There's the history of the band and just a love of music in general. That's one thread that goes through the album. And then there's just this confrontation, this confronting assholes thread, all the way through as well. They kind of run parallel at the same time. Well, this is one of the confronting assholes songs, and this is Steve having a go at someone. Well, he says it's sort of about a few different people, but so I guess. But it's that classic sort of thing that really works so well, where you get like a sunshiny 60s sort of track with a not so sunshiny lyric. Yeah, and the video is great, with all 4 members, and they're all up in the Hollywood Hills near the sign, and they're all dressed in these matching pistachio suits with matching guitars. All right, next up is a song called Terrible Band. I was really excited when I saw that title because I really love when people write songs about how shitty somebody else's band is. It's a favorite subject of mine. I don't know. It's a rockin' track by a great band about a terrible band. It was written by Jeff. Now, I haven't really cracked the code on this one. It may seem obvious on the surface, but just like with Steely Dan, everything's a reference with Redd Kross, so, so there's bound to be something more to it than meets the eye. Now, best I can do is say that I suspect the bearded man in the song is Jesus. I don't know. Now, I mean, Jeff, he loves making reference to Kiss, he loves making reference to witches, and he loves making references to Jesus, so I don't know. All right, so the next song is called Stuff. Yeah, Stuff. Talk about, this is another one where I saw the title, I'm like, ooh, I think I know where this is going. And yeah, sure enough, at last there's a song for all of us hopeless stuff people. Yes, thanks to Steve McDonald, we have this song now. And it's kind of a punkish track that's heavily filtered through early Beatles. All right? And one of the greatest lines, it's plain to see that this stuff is collecting me. I feel seen. And then there's this lyric that I want to quote here. I'd rather be remembered for what I've said and done, not for what I bought or commissioned by the ton. There you go. All right, so the final track on the side is Back of the Cave. Now, this was co-written by Jeff and Steve, and it has a really great, very Baroque 60s melody. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Love is Blue by Paul Mauriat, and it's another track with a great modulation. I love when tracks modulate into a chorus or a bridge. It's just like, it gets me every time. I'm a sucker for that. Yeah, Back of the Cave. All right, so now we switch records. We go to side 3, and the opener for side 3 is a song called Too Good to Be True. And it opens with the line, you were looking for something, and it's not a kiss. Oh, yeah, well, that's for all you Kiss Meets the Phantom fans out there. Yeah, so, I don't know if, maybe some of you, everybody who's a Kiss fan who's listening to this has to have noticed that. I can't possibly be the only one. But this track, it kind of sounds like an updated version of early Redd Kross. There are definitely elements of the Posh Boy EP in here, and mixed with their later sense of melody, of course. But yeah, another one of the great tracks on this record. Let me say it's one of the shortlist tracks that would make my single disc version of the album, for sure. All right, so the next track is called Way Too Happy. Now, as most of you probably know, there's a new Redd Kross documentary that just came out, made by Andrew Reich. Really great documentary, and this album kind of is a companion piece in a way to it sort of came out in conjunction with that documentary. And now some of the songs on this album were inspired by things that were said by people who were interviewed in this documentary, and this one is the most obvious. In the documentary, Dale Crover, who is the longtime drummer of the Melvins, but he's also currently the drummer of Redd Kross, well, he tells a story where Redd Kross were playing in Seattle in the late 80s, and an early version of Nirvana, like the early lineup of Nirvana was there at the show, and they were saying to him, these guys are too happy. They're way too happy. Why are they so happy? And, so Jeff and Steve saw this, on an early cut of the documentary, and so Steve wrote this song. Up next is Simple Magic. It's a song about the simple magic of music, complete with a George Harrison reference. The chorus is infectious, but then I suppose that's par for the course for Redd Kross. What are you gonna do? Alright, so the closing track on side 3 is The Witch's Stand. And this was written by both Jeff and Steve. This track grows on me more and more with each listen. In fact, at this point, I would say that this is a shortlist track, that it would be on my single disc version of the album. Now, the chorus in particular is so strong, and it modulates into this gorgeous bridge, and it almost sounds like 70s Elton John riding on a guitar. That's kind of where this is at. I love this track to death. Alright, so turn the record over to side 4 now, and the opening track is Lay Down and Die. And, a Vox organ drives the verses with a sound that kind of reminds me of something you might have heard on public access TV back in the 70s or 80s. And even more than that, it reminds me of the Malibu Kids. Okay, this would definitely fit on that record. Anybody who knows that, it's a side project of Jeff and Steve's from the early 2000s when Redd Kross was sort of on hiatus. This track would fit perfectly on that album. And there you go, Lay Down and Die. Now, up next is a track called The Shaman's Disappearing Robe. Now, this is a bouncy, quirky kind of tune that I really just have not cracked the code on yet. Yeah, lyrically or anyway, yeah, I need a little bit more time with this one. I like the track, but it hasn't sunk in yet, so I don't really have a lot to say about this one. I really tried. I listened to it a few times today, and I'm like, this one it's a little bit more elusive. So maybe check back with me in about 6 months, a couple of years. I could probably just go on and on about it. For right now, it's just another good track on this album. But this next track, Emmanuel Insane. Now, this is a new phase Redd Kross song. Now, much more so than Canción Enojada. Now, the title is a play on the French softcore porn Emmanuel movies, and you'd have titles like Emmanuel in Venice or Emmanuel in Space, and well, here's Emmanuel Insane, and of course, there's the Bowie reference to add a little more to it, and it's a pretty weird track. That absolutely sounds like nothing else on this album, and like nothing else in the Redd Kross catalog. And it boasts an electric sitar, so there you go. Emmanuel Insane. Alright, so now here we have the closing track of the whole album, Born Innocent. Yeah, the title track of the documentary that just came out. And it was co-written by the brothers, and it's about the formation of the band in the late 70s, early 80s, when they were literally children. And yeah, I mean, basically, it's the story of the forming of Redd Kross, and it's, you hear it over the end credits of the documentary. They show the actual music video that they made for this record, or for this song. This is actually one of the singles that came out, and it's a very fitting closing to the album. And let's hope it's not a closing to Redd Kross, because this would be kind of a tidy, spot to put a bow on it, but don't do that, Redd Kross. Don't do that. Make many, many more albums. All right, so there you go. That is my little rundown of the new Redd Kross. Now, I mean, I've only had a couple of days with this. The record came out on Friday, but I've had it since Monday. I pre-ordered the vinyl, and it showed up on Wednesday, a couple of days ahead, because they mail these things out sort of kind of guessing how long it might take to get to people's places. Some people got theirs a couple of days before I got mine even. So I've had only a few days with it, and so these are sort of my earliest impressions of these tracks. And but man, so far so good. I mean, this is easily for me, this is easily the best of the albums that they've made since they have returned. But it's also better than a lot of their earlier albums too. I mean, I don't know. Maybe one of these days I'll do a Redd Kross album ranking. I suspect this will rank pretty high. This is a stellar late period Redd Kross album. I mean, is it late period? I mean, who knows? Redd Kross, they could go on for years, right? And but again, just a stellar album from a stellar band. Give it a listen. I mean, all you people who've heard me talk about Redd Kross 1,000 times on this channel, well, here's your chance to check them out. Check this album out and duly worship, because that's the thing. Redd Kross fans, one doesn't merely like or love Redd Kross. One worships Redd Kross. Okay? That's just how that is. That's how it works. So if you want to get on the bus, you must be prepared to worship, okay? All right, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for watching these videos, and thank you for subscribing if you have. But if you haven't, consider subscribing. If you do, click the little bell, because notifications. But come back this Thursday, because Tommy Von Voigt and Crystal Durant are going to be back here, and we're going to continue our Albums of the Year series. And this week, we're going to be discussing our favorite albums of 2017. Tommy is so excited. Okay? All right. I will see you guys then.